Do you remember when New York didn't feel exciting anymore, but simply exhausted? When the city still moved, but everyone inside it felt worn down? In 1977, New York wasn't dreaming big. It was just trying to get through another day. Riding the subway after dark meant keeping your eyes down. Walking home meant listening carefully to every sound behind you. This is a story about a city pushed to its limit, about ordinary people who stayed when leaving wasn't possible, and about a summer when fear, heat, and uncertainty filled the streets. It is also about one night when all the lights went out, and something deeper was revealed. If you lived through those years, you may recognize yourself in what comes next. That was the feeling hanging over New York in the summer of 1977. The air was heavy, and not just from the heat. On Bronx streets, the pavement seemed to hold yesterday's warmth well into the night. Storefront gates rattled when trucks passed. Somewhere down the block, a radio played low, mixing news with static. On subway platforms, the smell of metal, oil, and damp concrete filled the lungs. Trains screeched into stations covered in graffiti, their windows scratched and cloudy. People stood close but kept their distance, eyes fixed on the floor or the tunnel wall. Nobody lingered longer than necessary. Corner bodegas stayed lit late, their buzzing fluorescent lights spilling onto cracked sidewalks. Inside, fans pushed warm air in slow circles. Outside, trash bags waited for pickup that might come tomorrow, or might not. This was not a city of bright postcards. It was a city surviving 1 hour at a time. New York in 1977 was not just a place. It was a mood, shared quietly by millions, carried home each night and brought back again the next morning. You felt it before you spoke, before you complained, before you even stepped back outside at night again. By 1977, New York was a city running on empty. Just 2 years earlier, it had stood on the edge of bankruptcy, and everyone still felt the aftershock. Budget cuts were not headlines anymore. They were daily life. Police cars were fewer. Firehouses closed or ran short-handed. When alarms rang, help sometimes arrived late, not because anyone didn't care, but because there simply weren't enough people left to send. Parks grew wild at the edges. Streetlights flickered or stayed dark for weeks. You could see it in small things. Garbage cans overflowed. Broken payphones stayed broken. A cracked step in front of an apartment building never got fixed. People learned to step around problems instead of waiting for someone to solve them. What surprised many was not the decline itself, but how quickly New Yorkers adjusted. Complaining took energy, and energy was in short supply. Neighbors fixed what they could. Shop owners swept their own sidewalks. Everyone understood that for now, survival was personal. If you remember that feeling of having to rely on yourself and the people nearby, you were not alone. Millions carried the same quiet understanding. And for most of them, leaving the city was never really a choice. It was not pride, it was necessity. The city could not carry everyone anymore, so people carried themselves, day after day, hoping tomorrow might feel a little lighter than today. That hope kept them moving forward quietly. There were many reasons people stayed in New York in 1977. Most of them were simple, and none of them were easy. Moving cost money. Starting over required savings, contacts, and confidence. Many families had none of that. Their roots were here, sometimes going back generations, tied to one apartment, one block, one familiar street. Work was hard to come by, and when you found it, you held on tight. Some worked 2 jobs. Others worked nights, weekends, anything that paid. Paychecks disappeared quickly into rent, groceries, and subway fare. Still, people showed up. They punched clocks. They kept promises. That quiet persistence held the city together. Families adapted the best they could. Children spent more time outside than inside, learning the rhythms of the street early. Parents watched from windows, calling them home before dark every single night. Dinner was simple. Television sets were small. The evening news played low while someone folded laundry nearby. One detail many remember is how grown up the children seemed. They learned awareness early. They learned responsibility early, not because they wanted to, but because the city demanded it. If your family lived that way, you may still remember those evenings clearly, the worry mixed with love, and the feeling that tomorrow depended on everyone doing their part. For them, staying was not stubbornness or romance, but the only practical decision life allowed at that moment in the city they already called home. The longer people stayed, the more they learned to live with fear as a daily habit. In New York in 1977, it was not the kind of fear you talked about. It stayed quiet, tucked into routines and small decisions made without thinking. People learned where to stand on subway platforms and which cars felt safer. Eyes stayed forward. Valuables stayed hidden. A purse was held close. A wallet stayed deep in a pocket. No one wanted attention, especially after sunset. Crime was part of the evening news, but it was also part of the walk home. Sirens were common enough that they blended into the background. When something happened nearby, people did not rush toward it. They moved away faster, heads down, hearts beating harder than they would ever admit. One of the strangest details many remember was the silence. Subway cars could be packed, yet nearly soundless. No conversations, no eye contact. Everyone sharing the same unspoken agreement to get through the ride without trouble. This was not living in constant panic. It was living in constant awareness. Enjoyment came second, survival came first. People adjusted their expectations quietly, telling themselves that this was just how things were for now. And over time, that vigilance became normal, woven into everyday life, shaping how the city felt once the sun went down. It settled in very quietly. When July 13th, 1977 arrived, the heat had already worn everyone down. By evening, the air felt thick and unmoving, the kind that pressed against your chest. Then, just after nightfall, the lights went out. Not one block, not one neighborhood, but nearly the entire city. Streetlights disappeared. Subway trains stopped where they were. Elevators froze between floors. Apartments filled with darkness and the sound of open windows as people tried to catch a breath of air. Phones went silent. Radios faded. New York, a city built on motion and noise, suddenly stood still. Outside, the city split into two very different experiences. Some families stayed inside, doors locked, sitting close together on couches and kitchen chairs. They listened to distant glass breaking, sirens stretched thin, and voices echoing down streets that felt unfamiliar without light. Many wondered if this was the moment everything finally fell apart. Yet in other places, something quieter happened. Neighbors checked on one another. Someone shared water from a cooler. Someone else watched the children while parents spoke in low voices. For the first time in years, the sky revealed stars most people had forgotten existed. Fire crews were overwhelmed, and some neighborhoods waited helplessly, unsure who would come first. If you were there that night, you may still remember the mix of fear and closeness, how darkness made the city feel smaller and strangely human. The blackout lasted about 25 hours, but the memory lasted much longer, leaving behind the sense that even in the worst moments, people could still find one another. Out of that long, difficult period, something unexpected began to take shape. In the Bronx, young people gathered where they could, using extension cords and small generators to power turntables. Music filled parks, basements, and community rooms. It was loud, rhythmic, and honest. It spoke for those who felt ignored, turning frustration into movement and pride. At the same time, subway cars became rolling messages. Names, symbols, and colors covered metal walls. To some, it looked like chaos. To others, it was proof of existence. It said, "I am here. I matter." The trains carried those messages through every borough, seen by millions each day. This culture was not born from comfort. It came from pressure, from neighborhoods pushed aside and voices rarely heard. Creativity became survival. Expression became identity. In a city that seemed to be falling apart, people were quietly building something new, using what little they had. It did not erase the struggle, but it gave meaning to it, and reminded many that even in hard times, the human spirit keeps finding ways to speak and endure. Looking back now, New York in 1977 feels different from the city we know today. Life moved slower, not because it was easier, but because people waited more. They waited for trains, for repairs, for better days. Conversations happened face to face, on stoops, in hallways, at kitchen tables. News came from radios and evening television, not from screens in every hand. Today, the city is brighter, faster, louder. There are more lights, more choices, more noise. Yet many remember how connected people felt back then. Even in hardship, neighbors recognized one another. Small favors mattered. It is simply noticing how closeness often grew when life asked people to slow down together. Those memories shape how many remember the city. Time has a quiet way of moving things along. The New York of 1977 slowly faded, block by block, year by year. Some neighborhoods were rebuilt, others were erased. Buildings that once held generations disappeared, taking their sounds and routines with them. Many of the people who lived through that year are gone now. And with them went voices, faces, and daily rituals that were never written down. What remains are memories, carried carefully by those who stayed long enough to remember. The feeling of walking familiar streets, the sound of keys at the door, the knowledge that you endured something difficult together. Those years did not last forever, but they shaped everyone they touched. And even as the city changed, those memories stayed alive, quietly reminding people of who they were and what they survived. In the end, people did not love New York in 1977 because it was beautiful or easy. They loved it because they endured it together. They stayed through broken systems, dark nights, and long summers, holding on to work, family, and one another. That shared endurance became a quiet bond. If you lived through that time, your memories matter. They are part of the city's story, even if no one wrote them down. If you feel comfortable, you're welcome to share a moment you remember, a street, a night, or a feeling that stayed with you. And if you choose not to, that is enough too. Like a summer evening cooling, this story settles into silence. The lights dim, the windows close, and the city rests, carrying its memories forward.